like to call this meeting to order. Will you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With your indulgence, I would like to move appointments number 10A to the head of the agenda so that we don't have to keep Catherine out in the cold too long tonight. I believe you have a copy of
Very back in your packet.
marked item 10A. Do you go by Catherine or Kitty?
Kitty.
Kitty, okay. That'll be easy, that was my grandma there. You want to come up to the microphone, please, so that you get on? And just tell us a little bit about yourself and...
Is that on?
Yes, you don't hear it.
You don't hear it.
It just goes direct to the
Directly
recording.
in, yeah.
So I live on 70 Brandy Street, right next to the high school. Endured the entire high school renovation project after my kids were already gone. My only involvement with the town, other than being a justice of the peace, is, and loving that and having married a number of folks from town, but also around the state, was that I was involved for many years while my kids were at the center school and also at the high school in the drama programs or the variety show that we renamed them. Back in the mid-90s is when I started and probably finished up right around the time I got a job that took me out of the state a lot, so about 10 or 11 years. In the meantime, I've been working at different universities, working on different projects, but a trip abroad in 2014 really brought my awareness to the impact on our water systems of what we've done in the name of progress. And recently I joined the Connecticut River Conservancy, and I heard about Sustainable Connecticut as a project, and lo and behold, looked it up and found out that Bolton has one. We're trying, and it looks fairly new, and so I thought it would be a good interest and a good opportunity for me to be a good citizen.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Kitty?
Thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a little time on my hands.
Good.
We can fill that.
You know, that's a terrible sentence to say in front of
That's,
this board.
It's a pretty
That's a challenge.
ambitious effort, the Sustainable Connecticut, process. So
Well, it's in its infancy, and that's a good place to start.
that is.
It really is. You can be part of whatever happens. We can congratulate you or blame you. So.
Yes, and I'll be accountable for
There we
both,
go.
either. Yeah. So
Is your background going to be helpful technically or otherwise?
I think both. I mean, a lot of my work has been focused in the more recent years in higher education and academic exploration of systems level reform.
Mm-hmm.
So much of my work at the University of New Haven and more recently at the Central Connecticut State University has been around criminal justice system reform. Interesting conversation prior to this. The impact on a community, and I think that's really where my skills are. I do a lot of training, but I also do a lot of organizing, program and project management. So I do think that I would bring a good skill set, at least in terms of organizing some of the priorities and then garnering what support is needed. But finding out too what the resources are to even meet some of those criteria for the project, so.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
somebody want to make a motion to appoint?
Also move.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Congratulations, Kitty. You've been appointed to the Sustainable Connecticut Committee. Their next meeting is Thursday, December 12th, here at 7 p.m. Josh will get a message to the town clerk and a formal letter out to you. You'll have to come to the town clerk's office during normal business hours prior to that meeting to be sworn in. And we look forward to seeing you at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I do have
you.
one question.
Sure.
Am I allowed to ask one question? I do see that it's under the Selectmen's report, the project, so should I be staying for that, or will I get updated on that next week?
You'll get updated on that next week, but you're certainly welcome to sit through as much of this as you'd like.
Okay. I'm taking it little steps at a time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, seeing no other members of the public, move to approval of the minutes of November 12th, 2019.
Motion we approve?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve those minutes. Any corrections?
That's that same.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Correspondence, I don't have any this evening. Okay, ongoing business. Just a reminder that Finance and Administration is meeting this Friday at 12:30. Where?
Here,
Here.
Okay.
Thank you.
town hall. Yep.
That'd be good.
Better make sure that's on my calendar.
And Human Resources Subcommittee is meeting Tuesday at 7. Here?
Yes, also here.
Is that the 6th or the 12th? Sorry, the 13th. The Finance Administration.
That is the 6th. That is
That's the 6th.
2 days from now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And the other was Tuesday, yeah.
Correct. Excellent.
And I don't believe there's anything else to report for subcommittees because nobody's met. Properties and facilities. Josh, you want to give us some updates on the town garage and
Yes.
the national parks people coming?
Yes, National Parks visit is something that I just had the chance to talk to Johnny Carowin, who's been our liaison for the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route. He's, I believe, pretty newly on the project, and
Yeah.
he reached out to me to find out when he could come to Bolton and learn a little bit more about our site here, given that we're so instrumental in the trail itself. And hopefully that he can also talk to town staff and potentially even town officials. So I want to let you all know that from 10 a.m. to noon on Wednesday, January 22nd, Johnny, as well as at least one, if not more, maintainers from Valley Forge will be here to talk to at least myself, Patrice Carson, and John Dimitrovich.
Can I ask one thing?
Yes.
Is that maybe Kathy can send out a notice before that?
Yeah, we can send her a reminder.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yes, so we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we can show up. You should probably include Arlene
Yes.
in any discussion like that.
Absolutely. I haven't had a chance to talk to Arlene, but I'm meeting with her tomorrow morning about a
Okay.
separate subject. And the town garage project, it continues to move forward. Construction has begun for all intents and purposes, as I reported last time. Not much has honestly changed or developed since when we last met, but it's not stalled as it was before.
Quick question,
Yes.
the stairway to the building down here,
Yes.
the station, do we know where the stairs are they here?
To be honest, I don't know off the top of my head. My understanding is that they were ordered,
Oh, they've been ordered and
supposedly delivered.
supposedly delivered to somewhere, and I thought they were, because they were asking about putting them in the building to store them, but there was no room to store them, I don't know what,
Gotcha.
could you just find out?
I will find out. Absolutely. If Bruce doesn't know, I will
Was it-
find out.
We could put them in the barn.
We could put them somewhere,
Put them anywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or not road even in one of those classrooms.
yeah, something, I mean, it's gotta be a pretty big and heavy thing, I would think. But I've gotten asked some questions about, because everybody's heard that they were supposedly delivered or wanted to be delivered and.
Okay.
Well, last I heard, we
Just
didn't
shoot
know
me an
what they
email or
were.
something, Josh, and I'll let the
Absolutely.
guys know what's going on.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to highlight, the governor did come to the CCM convention yesterday and told us that he has called a bond commission meeting for 2 weeks from yesterday, I believe. So hopefully that will authorize the funding for town aid roads and steep grants, and shortly thereafter, we will get our money. Susan Beiselich was there today, and I asked her about it, if she thought we could get things by the end of the year, and she said that is the hope. So, not that we're gonna be able to do much with Town Aid Road in January,
say-
except to pay bills for the garage.
Yeah, if it gets stalled a little bit, we just loan it to ourselves and pay it back.
Yeah, once it's authorized, I'll
Yeah.
feel a lot
There we
better.
go.
Okay, Lower Bolton Lake status report, it's frozen.
It's fairly frozen, yes. Sorry I left that on there just in case our lake.
No, that's okay, that's okay, we generally don't see her,
Gotcha.
until there. You wanna update us on the 2020 budget?
Sure thing. If you all look at 6D in your packets, you'll see first and foremost breakout of what's been expensed in each department from the first of the fiscal year through November 30th. And actually, trends have changed considerably from November 30th or since October 31st. The last item that you had, or the last page that you had the chance to see. And you'll see that administration, we're now actually trending down far below where we've been trending up above prior years for the past several months. The few areas where we are trending a little bit north of where we have been in past years, notably in parks and town building operations. As you'll remember, we appropriated, or transferred I should say, at the last meeting, several $1,000s from from the town building operations and put that towards the town garage project. So a lot of what was formerly going to equipment is now been encumbered for the town garage building. So that's why we're trending a little upwards there. Also on fire, as has been noted several times, there were a few items that, due to the date on which those items were delivered to us, are actually being expensed out of this year, when previously it had been thought that they would be expensed out of last year's budget, which is why we're trending a little upwards there. In highways and streets, we have encumbered sand costs at this point where we hadn't in the past 2 years at this time, which is why you see that we are at 47.35% expensed as opposed to last year's 36, almost 37. Beyond that, we're trending pretty much at average to prior years, or maybe even a little thereunder. On the tax collection side, you can see for yourself we're doing extremely well in the current year levy. Motor vehicle is continuing to tick upwards, and this is only as of October 31st. So all of these numbers, of course, have increased since then, and we're doing especially well on interest and fees. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, new business. First item on the agenda is the election of a deputy first selectman, since we just had a town selectman, and I would like to nominate Kim Miller as deputy first selectman.
Sure. I'll go along with that. I'll second you.
All right, are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of Kim as our deputy first selectman? Aye. Josh, will you find out if she has to be sworn in for that position?
Yes.
And let her know. It was on my to-do list to ask you to do that, and I didn't ask you.
That'll be done.
Okay, the branding project,
Yes.
want to update us?
Of course. Well, if you all open your packets to item 7B, we received 4 quotes for the project, and I'm presenting to you what the lowest quote was in front of you. And I wanted to show you the quote very specifically because I think there were some questions last time as to what the scope of the project would be, and really what the benefits that would be derived from this. And I think a lot of the latter questions were answered. But this gives you an idea of exactly where the 8,000 that you appropriated last time and change would go, what this can help build for the town, and the kinds of elements that this can really help to be constructed that can in turn help create a better sense of place here in town. So you're more than welcome to look through each component of this specific quote that we received. So the 4 quotes we received, 1 was from a firm, 3 were from individuals. This happens to, by coincidence, be the most local of the 4 quotes that we got. This is an individual. The quote that we got from a firm was in the range of $59,000. Yes, and some of the other individuals, I believe we had one that came in around $11,000. Pretty comparable to this, except there was some travel costs involved. And then another one that was up in the $20,000 range. So unless there are blocking concerns, I would like to reach out to this individual and have a conversation with them about moving forward with the project. My question for all of you would be, and sorry, I meant to specifically address something that was brought up by Mr. DePietro last time. On the question of a tagline, it's been expressed by not just Selectman DePietro, but by many individuals in the community that the town for all seasons is something that is very near and dear to the hearts of them. So that line I would like to potentially strike from the quote, and that would be a discussion that I would have with Michaela's design. So I would like to hear from you a little bit about, would this body like to be the body that the designer comes and speaks with and works with on this project? Would you like to set up a bit of have one of the subcommittees potentially be the point of contact? Or would you like to have a little bit of a focus group developed from members of the community?
I think we need a focus group, I
Okay.
really do. There's a real piece of me that wonders if this is a waste of money and if the community will even accept it.
Okay.
So I was just gonna, it's funny that you just mentioned that, I was just gonna ask, and I apologize, because I know we talked about it last time, I just don't remember what the general statement of this was, like why were we doing it, and I apologize for having to re-ask that question.
No, not a problem.
Can you re-explain?
No, of course. And it certainly was one of the goals that I put forward, and I believe that it's very important for us to take a look at the way that people view our town. When they come into town, what is the first impression that they get? How do they recognize the town of Bolton as opposed to when they enter the town of Manchester, and how does it make them feel? And how do they identify town, whether it be facilities or whether it be parks, whether it be personnel, versus community, or I should say private locations. I think that branding project has a very serious potential to help create a more cohesive sense of place and better market ourselves to individuals who are looking to potentially move into town, who are trying to figure out if they want to stay in town in the long haul or not. When you have a more cohesive sense of place and you are able to draw more attention, we'll see, I think that you'll see, and it will happen gradually and over time. But as opposed to taking no action, you're going to see property values rise because more people are going to know that Bolton's on the map. They're going to want to come here, want to explore, and it's definitely part of, I think, really a first step in a larger economic development scheme.
I think like an important piece of that would be to document what the benefits are and then try to come up with something quantifiable, and I know that's probably
Sure.
difficult, but can you look and say towns that have done branding, their property values increased 2% or, whatever. Because I think people are gonna wanna see, I spend $8,000, what I get for that. Oh, okay, there was a $30,000 impact to the town, or 50,000,
I think you have to look at property values is a little subset. The other thing is in the long range, at least as I viewed it, is you have a choice. Either you go backwards, stay stagnant, or you grow. And if you don't grow, that's it. I mean, that's the beginning of your your backward downfall. And I think we as a community have to grow, be it residentially, commercially, industrial, we have to grow, and we have not, we've talked about it, everybody bites on edges. I think we needed a more cohesive way of approaching that. And Kim, your concept is, it's a good idea, because someone will ask you, well, why are you spending this money? What?
Yeah, I'm not
how-
against it, I think just documenting.
No,
Yeah.
but
And that may
but
help me
I'm saying, I'm
understand.
agreeing with you, but that is an important thing to do, because if we don't, and somebody's gonna ask, and, yeah, why are you doing this, and what do we get? How can we tell that this has been successful?
Right,
I guess that's really the question. How can we tell? And I think part of it would be, hopefully, some increase in growth and interest in coming into this community. When that happens and properties become a little more competitive, of course, they will finally increase. And they've been stagnant for a long time. You've had some real moderate increases, but still the market has remained rather stagnant. We have one positive element that's been happening here, and I think it's important that when this person looks at it, is our age demographics has, instead of going this, it finally leveled off. Instead of a rapidly aging community with the influx of younger families, that has leveled off. And that's a huge thing in this state, because the state as a whole is just aging dramatically. And that's a big factor that, I think the key upon that, we're actually becoming, I don't know how you say younger community, but a community where younger families are attracted to come here. So something maybe we want to key in on.
There are a lot of little things that go into this that you don't even think about, like uniforms, baseball uniforms for the kids, decals on the trucks like we talked about, just buying the same color vehicles for all the town vehicles, same color. People identify with that, like they identify with Manchester police cars or things like that. And baseball uniforms, something that, that may have the town logo on the back as opposed to just something that brings out the spirit and identifies. There's a lot of little things that go into this type of branding. So it's not gonna be all great big issues. You're gonna have a lot of little stuff that comes out of this.
And it's gonna be expensive to make all those changes.
Well,
But you could do them on
as things wear out, you
Correct.
change.
Right.
I mean, we just bought a new pickup. Our
Right.
color for our vehicles are mostly red for the town. We could have bought a red truck rather than a silver, things like that, with the same logo on the door. So when people see it go by, oh, that's one of ours, that kind of thing. And keeping them up, making things look nice and, pushing the guys to wash them after storms and things so that they always see a nice looking truck go by. It gives a little bit of pride in the community and things like that.
I want to echo a little bit of what you said, Andy, initially. The concern about, being a newbie on this. I didn't see the initial solicitation.
Mhm.
I'd love to see it. Would you ask?
Sure.
Because I'm not sure whether or not, I'm sure that this proposal that is in front of us looks good, but in reference to what?
Sure. And I can
Yeah.
provide a look even at some of the other proposals that came forward if you wanted, this just being.
I want to know what you asked for.
Yeah,
Your
and I can
RFP.
provide that too, yep.
And again, echoing your concerns, what do we really want? Coming down home today from the week for St. Sopola, there was so much damn traffic on the highway. I thought, boy, it's not coming into Bolton.
I used to feel that coming in every day. I'd go,
you get by Highland Park,
yep,
exit 4
Yeah.
in the hole,
that's
the mood changes, the temperature changes.
the feeling I get here. I've taken a deep breath and I can relax, and that's the mood that I want the town to portray, so to speak, so that you can come here, you can take a deep breath and relax, you're home, kind of feeling.
Exactly.
So if I'm being too conservative, forgive me.
Oh, no, that's why I said the quantifiable benefits, cause,
My hat.
and I know some of them are probably very difficult to measure, but there must be some historical data from, you know, other communities that have done it to say, on average, these were the impacts. And then that's a big, if you can say, oh, yeah, we spent 10 grand, but there was a, you know, $50,000 benefit to the town, then people will be like, oh, that, you
Right.
know.
And do we have any expectations about the economic development grant recommendations? Are they apt to suggest a unified branding?
So I specifically brought this up with that team before I went ahead and solicited any quotes. And they were all very supportive of the idea of townwide branding. They may also be recommending the idea of creating some centralized, and I think that, you know, so you were certainly there for many of these conversations, the idea of having these 4 towns come together under whether it be Chamber of Commerce type organization, whether it be something that really just helps to identify more of the Route 44 corridor all the way across to Yukon, to stores. But on the other hand, they all were, the 2 individuals, I'm forgetting their names, Sadie and Courtney, were very supportive of the concept of having the town have its own presence uniquely, because the bottom line is, and this is a little unfortunate, but we're competing with all the towns around us. As much as we might be working together on that grant project, at the end of the day, a development is either coming here or it's going to Manchester, and we have to try and sell Bolton. We just do.
I like Sandy's idea of a focus group
I think so too.
because we bring in people from the other.
Yeah, more than just our perspective.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get volunteers, so that should be no problem. Sorry.
We should have hit her up before she left.
But you may want to do it in conjunction with having it, not starting from scratch, but having one of our subcommittees as the core.
Yes.
And then focus it around that. This way, you have a core to begin with and go forward that way. I think it's probably, you have a direction, you know, rather than just, we don't want to start this from scratch again, because you're going backwards instead of forwards.
But you provide food.
There you go.
Go to
We have plenty of water.
The meeting that Georgina's.
We could bring in Georgina's pizza or something. Okay. All right, you've got some work to do here, but I think we're on the right path.
Okay.
It's just gonna take us a little while to get there.
Would, as an action item for the next meeting, folks like to bring in suggestions for people to serve on said focus group, and I'll bring the proposal that I put out? Kind of a 2-step approach. Okay. And I can send that out in my next admin update in case you wanted it in writing.
The superintendent, student representative program, is a loose sheet that was under your packet.
Yes, so this is an item that addresses another one of the goals that I had set out to you just a few months back. And it's a concept that my understanding is not very foreign to this board. Certainly several members of you have had the chance to have students come and interact with you in a meaningful way. So this proposal is just part of the goal of trying to get more student engagement here in town. And that's not just at the high school, but also college. But in this case, getting high school students from Bolton to come, attend, not vote, but to have increased opportunity and encouragement to speak out and talk about their perspective on many of the issues or initiatives or proposals that come before this board. So this is something that I have had the chance to talk to both Kristen as well as the high school principal about in some level of detail. There are a few ideas that are bouncing around about how those students would be selected, and I think that some of them are pretty exciting and might get a little bit more attention from the student body and a little bit more excitement around it. But in the end of the day, it's this board's decision whether or not it wants to have students come and engage in that manner, or if it would rather continue operating under the assumption that anybody's invited, and if they wanted to be here, of course, they could attend. Right now, I am suggesting that this be referred to committee for further discussion so that members of that committee or myself can reach out to the high school, hear a little bit more about their ideas on how this could be implemented, and come up with a more concrete resolution that could be adopted, inviting 2 students from the high school to come.
I think we can refer it to finance and administration without a formal motion,
Okay.
if everybody's in agreement.
Okay, I like the idea, but need some structure.
Absolutely, and that's why I think
It does
the
need,
committee.
it does
committee
need
needs to take-
structure. I've expressed it to Josh, but I've been to several Board of Education meetings, and I find the way the Board of Education treats their student representatives to not be what I would like a student representative to our board handled, where they give their report and then they get up and leave, and there's no input on any of the items on the agenda from that individual.
And that's not really a student representative on the board.
And that's my thought exactly, so I think,
You know, if we're gonna have a student come on the board and learn the politics of town government and what goes into it, they have to sit and be part of it.
exactly.
And contribute to the discussion, maybe not vote, you know, like we just talked about, but actually contribute and bring up points in a different perspective.
Exactly.
You know, and I'd encourage that. I think that's, you know, and to be here for the whole meeting, be part of us.
Well, that's the whole idea.
It's not like we meet till 11 o'clock at night.
No,
that's-
we're usually done by 8:30,
That's-
9 o'clock, which is not unreasonable.
You know, that's the
High
difference in this board versus a lot of the other boards. You know, the other boards, they literally go for hours.
Yeah.
Several hours.
And the fact that I think we would, I'd be happy to hear their
Just-
input
right.
on different subjects, because, you know, I'm not a high school student anymore, and I don't have that same perspective. And I'd like to have that perspective thrown at me on some of these things.
And I think it'd be, we could be, as a former educator, a good way to educate our students that you don't need a multi-hour session to solve issues and discuss
No, you
issues.
don't.
Is that if you stick to the point, do your job, you can do it quickly and effectively and efficiently, normally.
And I think, I hate to say this, I don't hate to say this, I think we work pretty well together. And I think seeing politics in general on the television, they probably have a bad idea of what politics really is, and they might get a good impression from us.
Yeah, I think this board listens, shares, listens, and shares.
We haven't had many votes that aren't unanimous.
We've had a few, but
But
not
not many.
Not too
Not many.
many, yeah.
And
But that's just, you know, we have varying opinions, you know.
we've compromised quite well, and I think that's what we need to show the kids, that it can work, and that our system of government does work if it's done by reasonable people.
Calling me a reasonable.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, he used the term as a general, we're all inclusive.
I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I have to
And I
agree
think that's
wholeheartedly.
That's something that they would
I mean,
appreciate.
yeah, we have different views on certain issues, but,
Mhm.
but the idea is, we have one common goal, and that's the betterment of the community. So
That's
once you work around that, you can overcome a hell of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'd be happy to have somebody sitting here from high school.
Okay, so we'll talk about that at finance and administration and get some additional information back under subcommittee reports at our next meeting. Moving on to my report, we held our first Sustainable Connecticut committee meeting a couple weeks ago now. It was actually pretty well attended, and we went through the requirements for certification and asked everyone to do some homework to go through the requirements for certification to decide what they had already done, because there are some projects that could have already been completed within the time period, which I think is the last 2 years, that just need to be documented and written up, to identify how many of those were there, to look at those that they or their group they're representing may be wanting to accomplish, and then approaching from that. So we're meeting again next Thursday, that's here as well, at 7 p.m. So hopefully after that meeting we'll have some concrete actions that are taking place. So the economic development grant, as we mentioned earlier, with the 4 towns, we're hoping to have that report any day now. But I think we also said that last month. So it's in the report writing stages. Courtney and Sadie were both at the CCM convention for the last 2 days, so I doubt anything got done or will get, done in their office this week, but we can hope. And then, Josh, I'm gonna ask you to talk about the National Park Service and Waro, an update on the signage grant.
To sum it up, the grant efforts are still in the works by members of the Bolton Heritage Farm Commission. Both Rhea and Arlene are meeting with me tomorrow morning to talk about some revisions that were given back to us by Johnny, the trail administrator. It sounds like they're pretty straightforward, but there's a little more work that needs to be done. And again, this is about the $22,000 that the National Park Service has reserved for us to really take aim at expanding and elaborating on our 300th celebration, actually. And it sounds like that's some of the edits that they want to see made, are to make it more about the 300th as opposed to just general operations on the farm. Yeah. So
Interesting.
all
That's
good.
kind of cool.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's great when somebody comes back with something that can improve your process as opposed to something that,
Criticizing it.
yeah, just to change it. Okay, your turn, Josh.
Okay, I'll try and be brief on each of these points. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about personnel and just job description updates in general. No problem. We do have a little bit of turnover occurring both at the senior center. We have one of our administrative assistants over there is retiring, and so we'll be hiring. We actually have a request, we have a call for applications right now, out and about. And also Deirdre McAvoy, who's been an assistant here in my office since I believe about April or May, will be leaving us. She's taken a job with the University of Connecticut, and we will be hiring to fill that position. I do believe that position is going to look a little bit different. It's still going to have many of the same responsibilities as it's had in the past, but I believe that it's going to have, after a conversation with Kathy, my confidential secretary, has expressed an interest in looking at and diving a little bit more into some of her other responsibilities and taking on some of Deirdre's position's responsibilities, and in turn turning some of the communications responsibilities over to this new hire and creating somewhat of a communications director position. This would be somebody who would look specifically at the website, all our outward-facing media, setting up and coordinating to get volunteers to make sure that we have video taken of all of our Board of Selectmen meetings, social media, and much, much more. But someone who's really taking, and also the e-bulletin and the development of hopefully other publications and brochures that we put out on a routine basis. So that's just a concept. It's still very much in the works, but that's something certainly that I'll probably talk a little bit more about with the Human Resources Subcommittee as we move forward, and as we talk about a larger strategic staffing plan in general.
Yeah, I would just caution you that calling that position a communications director
Sure, it's a working title.
Yeah.
It is probably not the best title, and I would recommend that
Manager,
we,
perhaps.
well, not even,
ED
It won't-
coordinator.
Sure.
won't be in the supervisors union,
Right, yeah.
so.
Right.
We need to avoid any of those titles that infer supervision.
Media coordinator actually might be.
There you
kinda
go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does,
Yep.
that's a great suggestion.
Absolutely. So that's part of it. There is also another position that I am very much hoping that we can get in the works. I found a few different funding sources, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about this as part of the Human Resources Subcommittee. But potentially looking at hiring someone who can be split between the Recreation Department and the Senior Services Department as a program coordinator. Someone who's really looking at what are we offering out to the public, how can I help develop that a little bit more, and how can I take some of those program requirements and necessities off of the plates of both Carrie and Kylene in our various departments so that they have more time to be doing, whether it's administrative work, certainly on Carrie's side, I know that she's pressed to get to more of the social services that she's trying to provide, and she hasn't found a lot of time to make that happen given that she's working on so many senior programs. So that's a possibility in the near future, and you'll hear more about that as we move forward. Job description updates, I do want to let you know, and again, we'll talk more about this in the subcommittee, looking at a new format for job descriptions, and I can pass these around if you'd like, just so that you could take a look at potential examples, but this is, or you can even look after the meeting itself, but I have an example of the job description format that we've been using in an updated version, and I think that you'll find it's much more clear and precise as to what each position has been doing and should have the capacity to do. So that's on personnel and job description updates. 300th celebration. Our next 300th meeting is this coming Wednesday, so that's December 11th. So it's after the holiday party at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall. Yeah. And that's more or less all that I have to say on this, although this coming weekend we do have several different events that are, to an extent, kicking off our 300th celebration, and a lot of 300th merchandise will be sold at the Winter Fair and other related events.
Where
this
is
coming
that?
weekend. Winter Fair is at Bolton Center School, I believe.
Is that where?
In the
Okay.
gym,
Yep.
where we
Gym,
had
okay.
the Veterans Day celebration.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have much to share with you on shared services, but as you've all seen in my updates, we are in continued conversations with neighboring towns, including Andover, on a number of different proposals. If any of you have questions on that, of course, please feel free to reach out to me as you see fit.
Just comment on that?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's a good sign the other day when all the surrounding towns shut their schools and ours was still open.
Agreed.
Of coordinating and getting things done and having things ready to go. And I think that was it's a subtle thing, but I think it's an important thing. That was always a concern with the school system, how it would work out. And to me, that showed that it worked out well, to say the least.
Absolutely. Agreed. Thank you. Yes.
One of the things we had talked about before, and I've mentioned a couple of times when you talk about shared services among communities,
Yep.
is the coordination of the resident troopers. So we could have between maybe us, Andover, Columbia, Hebron, having one on at all times.
Right.
And I, because there's we could be waiting for a state police officer coming from 20 miles, 30 miles
Oh,
away.
yeah, they could be out the window.
Right, and if we could coordinate something over the next, I know it's gonna be not an easy process, because the state police are probably gonna push back on it or whatever, but it would be nice if we could have some sort of coordination among the towns so that there was always a trooper on duty within the 4 towns, or 2 on duty within the 4 towns, so that they'd have a backup, a more reasonable distance, and probably a better expense of our monies, rather than having 2 on during the day or whatever here,
Well, we rarely have
Two on at the same time.
I know,
during the same hours.
But you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no.
So that we're not waiting for somebody that's coming
Right.
from North Wyndham or whatever,
Right.
we're only waiting for somebody that's coming from Hebron or Columbia, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
because it's not just us.
No.
I mean, the other towns depend totally on resident troopers have the same issue, so I'm sure this is it's not unique.
No,
What you bring up is something that, and I think it obviously can work, but it requires not only the cooperations of the local leaders of the town, but the state police to say it's a good idea. And it should be, to me, it seems to be a better use of their forces. And it's and it becomes more of a scheduling thing than anything else. And I don't know how then that involves their union, but I don't know how that, that's outside my realm, but.
Josh and I have been meeting every 2 months with the lieutenant who's in charge of the Colchester Barracks
Has the
these
same
days.
one been there for all 2 months?
The same one has been there now since the beginning of summer.
Ooh.
That's why.
Yeah, so that's record breaking, I think. But he's a very nice and easy individual to work with.
Oh, good.
Scheduling meetings is a bit of an adventure, but when he's here, he's open and honest, I believe. So we certainly can bring this up and have a discussion with him and give you some updates as to what their perspective is.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So can I ask a question I should know the answer to?
Sure.
All
Bob
right.
doesn't know.
What?
Bob doesn't know, so
No.
we'll tell Bob.
Okay, so troopers not on during some period, what if there's, what happens if there's there's a kidnapping or like something crazy? You call 911, who comes?
Colchester sends,
Colchester would send
Okay.
someone if it's a home invasion or a kidnapping or a serious
violence
domestic,
comes,
they will
yeah, okay.
contact Manchester or Coventry and get somebody closer.
then they rely on mutual aid besides them.
And then do we have a contract with them to,
Contract with.
to pay, I'm assuming.
No, there's no additional pay for that, that's
Okay.
it.
It's similar to the fire department mutual aid system, but
Okay,
it still could be a long wait for us, if,
Longer than you want in any case.
longer than you want, because our next trooper could be, well, how far does Colchester cover? Long way.
It does
Well, there
cover
should
North
be
Wyndham.
somebody on evenings in North Sector, which is Marlborough, Hebron, Andover, Columbia, Bolton.
Right.
So
Usually
it would
somebody
be
else.
there would be at least
Somebody-
one trooper in one of those 5 towns.
Right.
But to get from, if he's on the Lebanon side of Columbia to get to Bolton,
Right,
that's
that's
20,
all.
30 minutes.
Exactly.
okay.
And
But if there's a true emergency, there's.
Oh, yeah,
911.
there's other resources rather than just that one.
What are you planning?
It's a secret.
but unfortunately, our police force is the state police.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other towns have their own responsibilities, and you can't always be assured that the other towns can give you something. Because they have, that's ours and that's theirs and kind of thing. So it would make me feel much more comfortable if I knew there was one that was dedicated to 3 or 4 towns kind of thing. And within a reasonable period of time could show up for something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
On administrators' goals, we've already talked about a few, like branding, student representative program, appointments. So for updates beyond that, I have, Jill and I had a meeting on the financial policies that are continuing to be looked at and edited, and my goal is to have a draft of those edited policies in your inbox, as well as in the hands of the auditor before December 31st, just so you know. And
I'd like to have them approved by the Board of Selectmen before they go to the auditor,
okay,
just because of just because of the relationship. Let's leave it at that.
sure. And we can make that happen. I just know that December 31st, I think, was the date that had been set. in
Yes.
our responses last time, so. But in any case, you will have them at the very least by December 31st in your inboxes. Also, as far as the survey goes, we have over 660 responses at this point. Anything that you can all do to help gain more, especially if we could reach at least, of course my goal is 1,000, but if we could reach at least 850, another 200 or so responses, we would be in very good shape to look at this data statistically and say that we can be confident that we're looking at accurate information.
So how are they being controlled? How are they being broken down and collected? How are the information being
Correlated, yeah.
Sure. I'll be doing a number of different statistical regressions to figure out, yes, yeah, I can do all that. It won't take that much time. But we'll look at how age, how gender, how different aspects of one's experience relates to the way that they perceive Bolton, the way that they feel about various issues, that they feel about certain departments. And we'll, of course, then look at the raw data too. A lot of the questions are, do you believe that the town should do X? And the answer is yes or no, and you'll have that data to pretty easily digest as well. But I'll be putting all that into probably what I'm hoping will be a 2 to 3 page, it's probably going to be more like 4 to 5 pages, but a summary document where as visual as possible so that you can get a pretty quick glimpse of what you're looking at.
Okay, I have no idea how much time it will take, but my vision
Sure.
that the project might lend itself to the high school kids.
Well, it might. The software tool that we're using to collect the data right now will give us summaries. It will summarize the data and group all the answers to the questions so that you know how to do that. And then it would just be the regression analysis, and I'm not sure that anybody know, is that something they teach in high school these days?
Oh yeah, sure they do.
Grad school, learned it in grad school.
I did, that's where I learned it too. So,
Couldn't do it to save my life now, but.
Right. I'm fresh enough out that I remember.
and we're
For a
grateful.
bit, yeah. So use it while I got it. But in any case, I don't think that'll take too much time, and in the event that it does, I'll manage it. But thank you. It might be interesting to bounce it over to the high school and see if they're just interested in looking at some of the raw data and if they have a statistics class really just playing with it.
Yeah.
But
Because then it's real.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's their community, and
Makes it more
even some of
interesting.
them responded.
And let them come up, well, what's your analysis of this?
Right,
When you look at this, how do you interpret this?
right. What does it mean?
What's it mean to you?
Absolutely. So, I mean,
That'd be a great class, you're right, actually utilizing real data.
Yeah, even reaching, I know Manchester Community College has a statistics class because I taught it. But even reaching out there to see.
yeah. Just if they wanted to
Yeah.
mess around. Sure. And see if they have any insights to pass to us. The last the last item that I have to report on is agenda item summaries. This is something that I very briefly talked to Sandy about, and she hasn't really had the chance before tonight to see the layout that I'm presenting to you. But if you go back to 7C, you'll see that it's also labeled as 9E, that we talked about with student representatives. This is basic agenda item summary format that I had the chance to work with when I was in Windsor, and I feel pretty strongly that as long as you do it right and as long as you get the important information up front, this is a tool that I can continue to provide for you. I can have one on each item on the agenda. I can have one on specific highlights that might be a little bit more complex to talk about that you might want a quick breakdown and summary of. I would like to expand on this and of course get it to you on time. I know I got this, I just typed this up about an hour before you all got here, and I apologize it wasn't in your packet. But I wanted you to see an example of what an agenda item summary might look like, and so that you can take this and between now and the next meeting, pick at it a little bit, think, is there anything else you'd like to see included? Is it helpful? Is it useful? And how could I expand on it to make it a little bit more beneficial? So that's something that I'll also have ready. I'll have some agenda item summaries ready for committee meetings in the coming weeks, so you can expect to have a little bit more detail on the background for some of the issues we'll be discussing.
I think it's a good idea, just so instead of coming in cold.
Right,
It's actually excellent, because I know when I came on board, you guys had been here, you guys had been here. So it's like I had no clue, like you had 57,000 discussions about these things over time.
Right.
And I would have to say, give me the kindergarten version
Right.
to catch up. But even people are at different levels of in-depth into how much they've been involved in things, so I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. And not only that, but as we go along, if a year from now, if we drop the item of student representatives, but this time next year we want to pick it up, we'll have this to be able to say, well, this is exactly where we left off.
Yeah.
And we can just move on from there.
I think that's great documentation.
Okay, excellent. So I'll move ahead with it and we can make adjustments.
It will evolve like most things, but
Exactly.
you gotta start somewhere, so this is a great beginning. Okay, anything else before we
So
have the magic motion?
sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have 2 questions about things we've talked about before. I just wasn't sure of the status because I felt like we hadn't talked about them in a while.
Okay,
One was just the school troopers.
they
I'm sorry,
have
what?
the school's resource officer.
Yeah, school resource.
Nothing has happened at
Okay.
the school level.
No.
And then a while ago, a couple meetings ago, we had talked about there was a state organization that they were gonna give us some money, like $50,000 to use now and then $50,000.
That is the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving.
Okay.
And we are desperately seeking volunteers to serve. I had a long list of people that I approached and they all said no.
Really? Okay.
I did have a conversation with Lori Spielman, who is the first selectman of the town of Ellington. And she was having similar issues with finding volunteers. So they had a conversation with the Hartford Foundation folks and ended up with their library director, their social services director, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and a member of the faith-based community
Okay.
in Ellington. And
Because they had strict, like you couldn't be an officer.
Right,
you
you
couldn't,
Right,
couldn't be
you're right,
on
They
the
eliminated
board.
so many people that
Right,
they
in a
made
small
those are
town.
It's
all
all the people who volunteer for stuff.
yes, yeah, and that was a concern that we brought forth. And so
Oh, so Lori got him to do that?
Lori got them to do that, so I have on my to-do list to reach
She
back
did a good
out to
job.
them.
She was one of my students.
Was she really? To see if we can get them to do something. Our social services director is a resident of town. So,
Okay, thank you.
Well, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.